Hi, my name is Rob Sipple. I'm the Geospatial and Numeric Data Librarian at Florida Tech's Evans Library, and I'm here today to talk about how to go about georeferencing images. Now, in the context of today's talk, when I refer to images, I'm talking about it could be a scan of a paper map, or it might be a photograph or some other image captured by an aircraft, um, like a piloted aircraft or a drone or perhaps a satellite. It could, for example, be the picture you're seeing right now, which is a photograph taken back in the fall of 1937, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, of a generally rural area. It happens to be in south central Pennsylvania. Lots of farm fields with a series of roads running through it. Now, as far as georeferencing goes, because this talk is about how to georeference images, georeference refers to taking this image and converting it to a form that can be used within a GIS model. Because as you see this photograph right now, it's really of very little use to a GIS model because it lacks certain key information. So you could pull this into a GIS model, but the model would not know certain key things like where in the world this picture was from or what geographic area it represents. It could just be a few square inches or it could be thousands of square miles. The, the GIS application simply won't know, and it won't know what the orientation of this image is either. We've been kind of habituated over the course of our lives to assume that the top of an image represents the north, the bottom the south. But realistically, if you have a picture taken by an aircraft or a drone, there's no particular reason to believe that when that picture was taken, the aircraft or drone was flying due north. So all of these things are lacking when you pull a simple, in this case, JPEG file into a GIS model. And to illustrate how this is the case, I'm going to pull this into an instance of ArcMap. And ArcMap is one of the family of programs that constitutes ArcGIS, which is put out by the Esri Corporation and has existed in um, one way or another for decades now. So I'm going to open up ArcMap. So as I mentioned, it's part of ArcGIS, so I'm going to expand this, scroll down a little bit. I'm going to select ArcMap. And as it happens, I did a little bit of legwork before doing this recording tonight. So I do have an existing model I'm going to open up. It's an extremely elemental model, as you will see. It's this one called Demo. And all Demo actually consists of at this point is a bookmark that zooms into a certain section of southern York County in the state of Pennsylvania, which is, as I happen to know, where the picture was taken. So when you georeference an image, what you're essentially doing is you are finding a series of points on that image that are recognizable, and one by one you're clicking on that point, and then you are going to click on some corresponding reference map to teach the GIS instance essentially how to align the image with the underlying earth. So as I mentioned, you have to go through a series of creating these reference points between the image and a reference map. So of course you need a reference map. There are a couple of ways you could go about doing this. The way I'm going to do today is simply to use one of the maps that's basically built into ArcGIS. So I'm going to go up here, see where this kind of plus sign is on top of the folder. It says add data. Just to the right of it, there's a drop down. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to say add base map, and I'm just going to add this kind of standard street map over here. So that's the approach I'm taking to that. You could also, if you say had located a shapefile from wherever you might have found it, you can also pull that into ArcGIS. You simply have to go over to your catalog window, which in this case I've got it parked here on the right-hand side of my screen. and you have to go to the folder that contains that shapefile and just click and drag it into your workspace to the left. And if you do not already have a connection to the directory containing that data, you can always create the connection by going to the top of your catalog window up here. You're going to look for this thing that looks like a folder with a plus sign on it. When I hover over it, it says connect to folder. You would click on that. You would navigate to the folder that you want to connect to, and then you would just click on OK. So there we have the entire Earth, which, as you'll see when we drill in on it a little bit, is going to show a section of York County in Pennsylvania. So I mentioned I'd created a bookmark earlier. I'm just going to go to that right now. So let's see, bookmarks and demo view. So you're probably not familiar with this area, so I'm going to just zoom out a little bit to get you a little bit more context as far as where we are. And you will see that down here is Baltimore, Maryland. The upper reaches of the Chesapeake Bay. Then over here a bit to the right are Wilmington, Delaware. There's Philadelphia up there towards the right edge. And then down here is the Delaware River flowing into the Delaware Bay. So with that, I'm going to go back to my previous view, my demo view. And at this point, I'm going to drag in that picture that I had up on the screen when I first started this recording. So it's in this directory that I've already established a connection to. It's called Jacobus in West. It's a JPEG. I'm just going to drag that over here, click and drag. And it flashes this message at us saying the following data sources you added are missing spatial reference information. This data can be drawn in ArcMap, but it cannot be projected. And that kind of gets to the heart of what I was saying earlier. There are a lot of unknowns about this picture right now. ArcMap knows it's an image simply because it's got a JPEG suffix on it, but that's about all it really knows. So I'm just going to click on OK. Now, if you'd pulled in some data that was already formatted, that was already set up for use in a GIS model, you could go and you go to the table of contents here, which I've got on the left side of my page, and you could right-click on the name of that layer, and you could say zoom to layer. And in fact, you can still do that here, but I'm going to show you what happens when you do that. So suddenly the screen's all blue, or at least where the map is, just shows a lot of blue. And if you look up here, you're zoomed into a scale of 1 in just under 27,500, which is a pretty big scale, so representing a very small geographic area. So I'm going to start zooming out to try to get some better sense of where we are, or where ArcMap thinks we're supposed to be. So I'm going to change that to 1 in 30,000. And we still don't see much. Actually, I'm going to change it to 1 in 300,000. That's what I meant to do. And okay, you're starting to see our picture here, but it's still surrounded by all this blue. So I'm going to zoom out some more. Still more blue, more zooming out rather. Okay, so now we're at least getting some different shades of blue. It's a little bit darker here in the upper left, and down here towards the lower right, you're getting a lighter shade of blue. So okay, that's kind of interesting. Zoom out yet more. And okay, we start seeing some little bits of land. We see an island here, Sao Tome. Something here called San Pedro in the upper left, but still not quite sure where that is. Zoom out some more. And you do this long enough and you eventually notice that we are somewhere off the coast, the west coast of Africa. The reason for that is in the lack of any information to the contrary or any better information, ArcMap is just going to assume that this image is located at its version of ground zero. For ArcMap, ground zero is 0 degrees latitude and 0 degrees longitude, which happens to be off the west coast of Africa. So our basic exercise today is to try to remedy that and give ArcMap a better sense of where this image is actually supposed to be. So in order to do that, you need a toolbox, a toolbar rather, that is specifically designed for use in georeferencing images. Now there are certain toolbars. You can see some of them up here in the top area of the screen on the left-hand side that you'll almost always see open in any instance of ArcMap. They're very commonly used toolbars, so they just automatically come up. But there are also a great many other toolbars that are meant for more sort of niche purposes and which you have to specifically open. In this case, since I've been working with this a little bit, that toolbar is already open, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So to open this toolbar, you would right-click on this gray area up here, and you would go down and you would click on the georeferencing to actually activate that toolbar. Now, as I mentioned, I've already got it open as it happens. And if you look down here at the bottom of the screen in what might be referred to as the tray, you will see that toolbar. If you don't like it down there, you can always just click and drag it to wherever you might want it. But for my purposes, having it down at the bottom of the screen works just fine. So let's explore this a little bit. So this thing there's a drop-down menu here on the left side of that toolbar. It's set to do georeferencing, which is good because that's what we in fact want to do. It has assumed that we are looking to georeference the Jacobus in West JPEG image, which is a reasonable guess because that's the only image we've got in here. But if that were not the case, you could do the drop down, you could select another image to georeference. We've got this icon here for, let's see, we can get this thing to pop up the description. Well, it's not going to for whatever reason, but this here is the icon for adding reference points. This is an icon for that's supposed to allow you to add reference points using an automated system. I've never had much luck with it. I'm not going to show it to you today. Over here, we've got, I'm going to click on it. And okay, so that's an icon that shows the image that you're trying to georeference. So we've seen that before, so I'm just going to close it for now. Then here, that's the view link table. So once you've created some reference points, those will be reflected in this table, and we'll spend some time looking at that in a few minutes. And this is used for rotating a layer and clicking and dragging it, which is something you might want to try at some point. I found for what I'm doing right now, I didn't really use it, but it's something you could play around with in the future. So let's start by opening the image again. So I'm going to click on the viewer. And since that just blocked my toolbar, I'm going to move this just a little bit up so it's not in the way quite so much anymore. And I'm going to start adding some reference points. So now it's decided to do the pop-up. So okay, that's what you click to add control points. I'm going to click on that. And I have a certain amount of familiarity with this region, so I'm just going to go about starting to add some control points. So for example, you see it's kind of this road cutting across here, then it kind of takes a cut to the southwest, and then it intersects this road here, this road that's running roughly north to south. We're kind of fortunate in this case because this picture is basically oriented in a typical top of the image is north orientation, so we got lucky in that regard. So I'm going to click that point, and then I need to click a corresponding point on the map. So to see the map again, I'm going to turn off this image by, all right, unclick that, and I'm just going to slide this off to the side here. And okay, let me go back to my demo view here. And I happen to know that that corresponds to this point here. And so you see that point shows up there with a little crosshairs, the number 1. So that is your reference point number 1. So let's go back to the image. All right, so I turn the image back on, you will see here. And I'm going to pick another point. So a basic rule of thumb when doing this is it's always good, I would say, to have at least 5 or 6 points. Basically, the more points you can get, the better, but it's also important to try to have those points spread throughout the image that you're trying to georeference. Because if you were to say, if I were to add a whole bunch of georeference points that were all concentrated in, say, the upper left-hand corner of this image, then I could be pretty secure in the belief that that portion of the image was well matched to the underlying reference map, but I wouldn't really have that great an assurance for the rest of the image. So you really want to try to disperse your reference points throughout the image. So that being said, let's go here to the right-hand edge. See this line coming from basically west to east. There's a little junction here. Follow that down. And you kind of see there's another road coming in from the southeast. So I'm going to click on that juncture there. I'm going to turn off my image layer again so I can see the underlying map. And it turns out that as you're doing this, ArcMap is improving its estimate of where the image should lie, and so this is actually pretty close to where you want to be already. But let me just confirm that, and yes, I'm going to put that about there. Now let's go back to our image. So I'm going to click that back on again in the checkbox. Let's take a look at this road here. It's kind of goes through a big bend here, then it kind of shoots off to the northeast. And then here, there's another road that kind of comes up and meets it right there. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm gonna, let's see, here it goes. All right, so put that there. And now I'm going to go down to here. So this road here is known as Susquehanna Trail. This is called North Street. I'm going to click on there. Turn off my image. And I'm going to click over there. I'll go back again to my image. And let's see, what else can we spot here? So again, this road here kind of goes around a big bow of a turn here. And then you can see like right about here, there's another road that goes off to the, generally speaking, the east. So at that intersection there, I'm going to pick that point. Again, turn off the image. And then you see it here. So now we're up to 5 points. That's getting pretty good. Let's try to get one more in there. So turn on the image again. And if you look at this, you'll get to a point out here. So just a little bit north of that point number 2, there'll be a point up here. It's a junction of a number of roads. So you got this road coming basically east-west. Got this one running more or less north-south, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but you've got another one that's kind of coming in northwest to southeast, and they all converge right there. So I'm going to pick that, turn off the image, and then click on the corresponding point over here. And actually, I can now see that point number 2, I think I just flat out put it in the wrong location. So I'm going to try to correct that in a moment. So let's try opening up this other table here, this view link table. And all right, it opened up on my other screen, so I'm just sliding it over. So point number 2, well, before I talk about point number 2 specifically, what you're basically asking ArcMap here to do is a kind of a big curve fit between the points in the image and the points in the underlying reference map. And as is the case when you're doing curve fits of various kinds, you've got residual values. And generally, the lower the residual value is, the better the curve fit is. So we got our points 1 through 6 that we just picked off. And then on the right-hand side, we've got this column of residual values. And you want to get these as low as possible. Ideally, they should be, say, like down around 5 or 10 at most. And as you can see, we're getting some higher values than that. And for point number 2 in particular, we've got a very large residual value. So I'm just going to click on that line. And up here, let's see, I'm trying to find the right, oh, what was that? Delete link. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to close this box for the moment. I'm going to go back and try to redo that point. So again, we're over here towards the right. We sort of went down this road till we got this intersection here. I'm going to click there. Now let me go back to my underlying map. Again, down this road and intersection and like right about there. So let's open up this link table again, take a better look at it. And you can see those values have gotten a lot lower with that correction. So that was definitely a problem, that one errant point there. If you go down here towards the bottom, you've got a drop-down menu for the type of transformation that's being used. And it's defaulting to a first-order polynomial. And the more points you have on here, the more options you've got as far as the types of curve fits you want. So we could get as high as a second-order polynomial. If we had more points, we could get maybe a third or a fourth-order polynomial. But for now, let's just choose second-order polynomial. See where that gets us. And you can see immediately that knocks our residual values way down. So we're doing a lot better. So I'm going to close this again. And actually, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. Well, the way I've been doing this is I've been clicking on points on the image, and then I've been clicking on corresponding points on the reference map. But there might be times when you can spot something in the image, but it's not necessarily indicated on the map. So the example that comes to mind for me is, let's say you had a photograph taken from a drone of the Florida Tech campus, and there in the middle of the picture was, you could make out the statue of our founder, Jerry Cooper. Well, odds are, if you were to find a map, it would not include the location of the statue of Jerry Cooper. But let's just say that you knew the coordinates for that statue. You'd send somebody out there with a little GPS unit, and they stood by the statue and they took a reading. They got a latitude and longitude for the statue of Dr. Cooper. Well, if that were the case, you can go into your figure, and I'm just going to kind of randomly pick a point on this image, you could just start by clicking a point on your image. Let's just pretend this is the statue of Dr. Cooper. You could just click on that. And then rather than going to the reference map, you could right click. You could choose this input X and Y. And in this case, X means longitude and Y means latitude. And in ArcGIS, it looks for longitudes and latitudes expressed in decimal degrees, not degrees, minutes, or in seconds or anything like that, but just decimal degrees. And the fundamental rule is that with regard to latitude, the northern hemisphere is positive latitude, the southern is negative latitude, and for longitude, the western hemisphere is negative longitude and the eastern hemisphere is positive latitude. So I'm not actually going to add a point like that right now. I just wanted to show you how it can be done. So I'm just going to cancel out of here and hit escape a couple of times. So let's do a little bit of a sanity check here on our images and see how they seem to be lining up with the underlying map. So I'm going to go here and click on my pan option here. I'm going to start zooming in on some areas here. So Susquehanna Trail here. Seems like there's a little bit of a gap between there and the road on the map. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. And likewise, if I scroll down here, yeah, there's also definitely a gap between where the road goes here and where it's supposed to pick up on the underlying map. So that's not really too good. So let's add some points to fix that. And once we do that, yeah, we might be able to get rid of these point number 3 and our point number 1. So let's do that. So once again, getting down to our toolbar here, I'm going to click on the Add Control Points icon. And I'm going to click there and there. And I'm going to scroll down here a bit. Ooh, what did I do? Bookmarks, go back to my demo view. All right. And let's see, I'm going to zoom in on the lower kind of area here. Just give it a minute to refresh. It'll get there, I promise. And I'm going to click on Add Control Points again. I'm going to sort of marry that to that. And with that, I think I can get rid of my original points number 1 and 3 most likely. So let's open up in our toolbar. Once again, got to open up the view link table and select 1. And let's see if I can do a control select. 3, I can. Okay, cool. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to delete those links. And you'll see that when I deleted them, it just renumbered all the other links as well. So let's go back and take a look at our picture. I'm going to go into pan mode here again. So, okay, now that's lining up very well, as it should be. And that's doing much better, not too surprisingly. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. All right, so this road here, you kind of see it squiggling along, and it feeds pretty well into this road here. This road here is feeding pretty nicely into the corresponding road segments on the reference map. You can kind of see here a little bit faint, but there's a road going through here, and that feeds into the modern day road. That's good. Here you can see this road kind of walking through here, and it feeds it. It links up nicely with the the current road. So things are looking pretty good here. Same here, feeds right in there. And these two, not quite as good, but actually let me add a point here and try to correct that a little bit, and then I'll get rid of this existing point number 4. So once again, add control points, and there, and there, and open up my link table, get rid of that. And close my table. So this can take a certain amount of kind of back and forth, and it's an iterative process. And all right, let's take this opportunity to add a couple more points. Now, that kind of looks like it should be up there. And that should probably be about there. And I'm thinking that should probably be more like there. So let's go back again here. And okay, some are better than others. Let's try to get rid of some of the ones that seem to be more problematic. That's number 9. Seems pretty unhappy with that. Actually, both 8 and 9, which actually are both ones I added towards the end here, doesn't seem very happy with those, so I'm just going to delete those. And so it seems like by and large, that's a pretty decent curve. That's a pretty decent fit right there. So at this point, you can start trying to get some sense of how things have changed since 1937. So I'm going to right-click in my table of contents. I'm going to right-click on the file name. I'm going to zoom to layer again. I'm going to double-click on this, which will bring me into the layer properties. And I want to go to the display tab, which conveniently it opened up to. And there's a setting here for transparency. 0% transparency means that as far as being able to see anything underneath the image, the image is basically entirely opaque. You can't see through it. So I'm going to try setting that to 50% transparency instead. And you can start to see some things here as far as changes since 83 years ago. And one thing you pick up on pretty quickly is, there's this lake here. That was all just farmland for the most part. And that is because at some point, and I'm not sure exactly when, the county dammed up a stream in the area to create what I think is basically a reservoir. So, these lakes here are entirely man-made. They did not exist when the picture was taken. And in particular, we got this big old interstate highway, Route 83, just plowing right through what used to be a lot of farmland, and these days is not so much farmland. So that probably wasn't anything envisioned by a whole lot of people when this picture was taken. So that's basically how you go about georeferencing. One more thing I want to stress is that unless you want to lose all your hard-earned work here, I'm going to want to open up that link table. Actually, I stand corrected. You don't need that right now. What you want to do here is on the georeferencing toolbar, where now it says georeferencing. I'm going to click on that, and you're going to get update georeferencing. So that'll basically save your work so that in the future, if you were to try to pull this photograph, this image into some other instance of ArcMap, it would know where to put it and how much area it should cover and how to orient it. So with that in mind, I'm just going to save the model here. I'm going to close this. I'm going to reopen ArcMap. And I'm not going to open up a pre-existing model, so I'm just going to cancel this. I'm going to start completely from scratch. I will add a background map. We'll just go with the same base map that I did before. And let me just give it a moment to pull that up. Okay. And I'm going to pull in my image, Jacobus in West. So it's going to click, drag it in. And I'm now going to, in the table of contents, I'm going to right click on that. I'm just going to say zoom to layer. And there it is. And everything seems to fit pretty well. So looks like it works. And that is how one goes about doing georeferencing using ArcMap, which is part of the ArcGIS desktop suite of programs, which has been evolving for literally decades. And for that reason, I think it's the version of ArcGIS that's most familiar to faculty members and students at Florida Tech at this point. And that's why I chose to introduce this session by describing how to go about doing georeferencing using ArcGIS desktop. However, there is also another version of ArcGIS, ArcGIS Pro, which has been introduced in recent years by Esri, the company that produces and markets ArcGIS. And it seems that that Esri is really focusing on developing this latest version, ArcGIS Pro, and trying to steer their users toward using it. And so I did want to spend some time today going into how one would go about doing georeferencing using ArcGIS Pro. So to get started, I'm just going to close down this instance of ArcMap. And I'm going to start up ArcGIS Pro. And I've already started up a model using this to kind of initiate this effort. So I'm going to go with this one here. And it pulls this up, and upon first examination, this looks generally similar to what you saw with ArcMap. Over here on the left-hand side is the table of contents, although it's now been named simply contents. On the right-hand side, there is your file manager, simply named catalog. And for this exercise, I've done something that if you choose to, you can also do to make it easier to match up my points when doing my reference points. I've actually provided indicators, little markers to show where they are so that when I'm pairing them up with the landmarks on the photograph, the image, it'll be easier to do so. So that is something you can elect to do as well. So on the catalog window over here, once again, you need to make sure that wherever you have your data, you have a connection to that file. And that will be found within this folders here. So I'm going to expand that. And since I've been working with this already, I already have a connection to the folder where I have my information. But if you don't, there's a way of doing that. So up here on the top, you see a series of tabs. You go to this one here called Insert. And there's an icon there for Add Folder. You would click on that. and eventually something, it showed up on my other um, monitor, so I'm just going to slide that over here. And you'd go about navigating your way to the desired folder, and let's just say it was this, and you would click on open and you'd make your connection like that. But I've already got my connection, so I'm going to expand over here on the right hand side. I'm going to go into expand Demo Pro, and here's my photograph, which in this case I've called Jacobus 4 Pro in West JPEG. I'm going to drag that over. And here it appears in the table of contents. ArcGIS Pro is laid out a little bit differently. The feel is somewhat different than what you'd encounter in ArcGIS Desktop. It appears that what Esri has done is they're trying to make this somewhat more, I guess, user-friendly to people who are accustomed to using products like, say, the Microsoft Office applications. And so to try to emulate that, they've created these kind of ribbons up top so that people who are used to those applications will be a little bit more comfortable with ArcGIS. So in this case, we don't have a toolbar any longer for doing georeferencing, but what you're going to need to do is you're going to go over here to the Imagery tab at the top. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to make sure that I've selected the image that I want to georeference. So I'm going to make sure I've clicked on that. And up here, there is this icon for georeference. I'm going to click on that. And you'll see that you've now created a new tab along with all the others that you originally had for georeference. You're going to do your work through that tab. And when you're done, you're just going to click here to close Georeference. That's going to wrap things up for you. So if you look at this, you're going to see some features that might look kind of familiar from the Georeference toolbar you were using with ArcMap, except now they appear in this ribbon. So there's this auto georeference, which I kind of poo-pooed, and I'm still doing that. There is this icon here for adding control points, which we'll be using shortly. And once you have your control point, there's this icon for opening up the control point table. Now, one feature that's been added for ArcGIS Pro is when you're getting ready to georeference, you're going to want to try to position yourself and zoom to the location that approximately corresponds to where you think your image should go. And once you've done that, you're going to click on this Fit to Display button, or icon rather. And at this point, we are more or less in the spot that we want that image to fall. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Fit to Display. And you'll see that, our image has been just kind of plopped down where we want it, roughly. We're going to refine that a little bit by adding some reference points. Or rather, I guess the proper term is control points. So this might look a little bit familiar to you by now. I'm going to go ahead up here in the ribbon. I'm going to click on Add Control Points. Now I'm going to go down here. You might remember this sort of roughly east-west road. I'm going to follow this to the west. Going to go around this bend and click on it right where it intersects that north-south road. That's going to be my point number 1. And as I've already pre-marked it on my reference map, you can see it very clearly there. I'm going to click right there. And then if you recall, we want to distribute our points as much as possible. So I'm going to go to this east-west road here towards the right-hand side of the image. I'm going to go to almost the right-hand edge, and then I'm going to travel south on this road. And I'm going to go to this intersection, and I hope you can see this. And in that intersection, I'm going to click for my second control point. I'm now going to close this layer to make it a little bit easier to see behind it. And let's see, I need to shift this whole image over a little bit to click on the corresponding point on the reference map. So at this point, and this is something I don't really like too much about ArcGIS Pro, it tends to shift this image. So I'm going to have to jump back over to this map ribbon. So I'm going to click on map up here. I'm going to click on explore. I'm going to shift the whole thing over. Then I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to click again on the georeference ribbon, and at this point it looks like I've lost my input for this point. So once again, I'm going to click on the icon here for add control points. I'm going to activate that image again. I'm going to go back down here to almost the bottom right hand corner. I'm going to click on that intersection there. And this time, since I can see the point I need to click on the reference map, I'm just going to go right over here and click on it. That's going to be my point number 2. So at this point, let's see, I'm going to try to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, now you might remember from before, we've got this road that kind of bobs and weaves in kind of, I guess, overall a north-south direction. And up here, it comes up here to this intersection with its road, creates kind of a little point. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to turn off my layer again, turn off this layer again so I can see behind it a little bit better. And right there, that's where I want to click on the reference map. So we now have 3 points down, so we're just cruising along here. I think next I'm going to try to cover this point here in roughly the middle of the image. So I'm going to turn on the image again. And let's see, going to go around this bend here, and it comes to an intersection right about there. I'm going to click on that. And you can kind of tell from the position of the marker that ArcGIS Pro is actually getting a pretty good sense of where this image should lie. So I'm going to turn off this image again. I'm going to click pretty much where it shows on the map. So it's 4 points down. Next, I'm going to tackle this location here in the lower left-hand corner. So I'm going to turn the image back on. Follow this north-south road down, and where this road hooks off to the right, I'm going to click on that intersection. Once again, turn off the layer, click on the appropriate location on the reference map, and I'm going to wrap up by just tackling this point over here towards the right middle. So turn the image back on, and so here we got our sort of east-west road. There it intersects this road that ducks to the south. So at that intersection there, I'm going to click. Again, turn off the image, and I'm going to click by the marker I placed on the reference map. So at this point, I think it's appropriate to take a look at our control point table, get a sense of how we're doing with our fit. So up here in the Georeference ribbon, I'm going to click on control point table. And just so it doesn't obscure quite so much, I'm going to just click and drag that down so it doesn't take up quite so much room. And so here's our 6 points. Cruise on over to the right-hand column. The residuals are already quite low, so those are looking pretty good. Here's our box for the type of curve fit we're going to use. So right now it's going with the first order polynomial. Again, the more, as in ArcMap, the more points you have here, the more options you'll have for what kind of a fit you want. I'm going to just try out the second order polynomial instead. And at this point you look at the residual values and effectively they've dropped down to nothing. So I'm going to close this box here, this table. Just going to go over here and I'm going to X on the tab here. That's going to go away for now. Let's do a quick visual inspection. So turn on the image again. I don't want to be adding any more control points right now. So at the top here, I'm going to go back over to the map ribbon. And I'm going to click on this icon for explore, and my little hand shows up. And so up here you kind of see this road going up, 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 kind of goes around a bend, and it seems to be connecting pretty well with the corresponding road on the current day map. Um, Down here, not quite as good. There's a little bit of a offset here, so we'll maybe have to go back and take care of that. Here, it looks like this road should tie into this road here. I could be better, but it's not too bad. A lot of this comes down to just figuring out how much time you want to invest in it and how good it needs to be. And this is mostly for demonstration purposes, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Here, we got this road on the current day map cruising in from the east, and it seems to marry up nicely with the road in the photograph. Here, we've got this road that, in this section at least, is heading from southwest to northeast, and then it kind of hooks around, and that seems to jibe pretty well with the road on the reference map. And so, all in all, it's looking pretty good. The one thing I kind of have some issues with is down here on the bottom edge towards the left side. I'd like those to match up a little bit better than they're doing right now. So I'm going to add a control point there to try to make that happen, and I will probably delete this control point here since it'll be a little bit redundant at that point. So back to the Georeference ribbon. So I'm going to click on Georeference. Once again, I'm going to add a control point. I'm going to click here at the end of the image, at the end of that road, and I'm going to just click just a little bit to the right of it on the current road. And then I need to try to figure out which point that is so I can delete it. So to do that, I'm going to, once again, I'm going to go over here, open up the control point table, and try to identify exactly which one that was again. And I'm going to do that by clicking on these various points. And as I do so, the point that it corresponds to on the image will turn blue. So that's not the point I'm looking for, but that is. So I've now selected this point as point number 5. And if you look here, you're going to recognize some of the same icons and functions that you saw in ArcMap. And one of those here is delete selected, so I'm going to delete that point. That being said, I'm going to close this table again. Again, just exit out. And I'm going to go back to my map ribbon. I'm going to choose Explore. And I'm going to start looking around. And so this road seems to match up with that road quite nicely. This road is really just matching up beautifully with the map. This is still a little bit off, but I'm just not going to worry about it for our present purposes. And let's see, that kind of feeds in, and it seems to pretty well match the image as well. Same here with this road. Seems to be doing pretty well. Reasonably well here again. It could always be better, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. And also up here. So on the whole, we're not doing too badly. So at this point, I'm just going to quickly save my work. It would be a shame to lose all this. So up here, that's the save icon. I'm just going to click on that. And let's look at ways to view this like we did on ArcMap. Again, the feel is going to be a little bit different than it was before, but it's all something you can get used to. Again, you can always just turn this image layer on and off by clicking and unclicking the layer in the table of contents. You can change the transparency of the image as well. The way you do that is now a little bit different. So I'm not quite as good at using this version of ArcGIS as as I am with desktop, so I may or may not guess correctly at this, but let's go over to appearance. And yes, I think this is it. So this is going to be transparency, I believe. Yes, layer transparency. So you can just use the slider and move that back and forth to play around with the transparency. And then there's also this swipe tool here. So I'm going to click on that icon. This little arrow is going to appear up here. And you can place it to any side of the image. You can place it up here, over here, down here, to the right. Depending on where you place it, the arrow is always going to point in towards the image. So let's say you're going to approach it from the right-hand side. So I'm just going to click and drag. So click, drag, and basically it just sort of peels the image back so you can take a quick peek behind it. And again, you can do this from any side. So let's just try it from the top. See the same kind of thing. And as before, let me get rid of the transparency on this. All right, so as before, you kind of pull it back and you can see some of the changes since this image was first taken in 1937, or the installation of Route 83, the interstate highway there, and the creation of these lakes by the damming of one of the local streams. So that, in brief, is how you, well, maybe not so brief, but that is how you go about doing georeferencing in both ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Pro. I hope you've learned a few things today and you find it interesting, and that you just head on out there and start georeferencing some images of your own.